Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on what side of the world you may be on. This is Roaming Prepper Channel. I'm your host, Pete. And once again, did I mute myself? No, I did not. Thanks for joining me. The title of this video, Tale of Two Cities. Which two cities? I'm going to talk about that, talk about some of the bigger picture. I'm going to show you a video of something that happened in New York State, not in the city itself, but further out in the college. And what it's telling us is not just a tale of two cities, it's a tale of two Americas. I'll be right back and let's talk about that for a bit. Well, once again, thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the premiere chat. Usually I make my own premieres, sometimes I don't. If not, you can also put it in the comments below the video, or you can email me, the roaming prepper at gmail.com. So, what am I talking about? The Tale of Two Cities. I'm talking about New York and Austin. Uh, Austin, Texas, New York City, there are universities all over America right now having anti war protests. Unfortunately, it's not just anti war, like even the protests during Vietnam. People didn't want to be drafted, they didn't want to go to war, they didn't have a beef with the Vietnamese people. They just didn't agree with the whole thing in general. What we're seeing here is a very targeted disagreement. It's not just we don't want the war and we don't want to be drafted, but we don't want the Jews. And that's kind of concerning because in 1937, 38, as the Nazis rose to power, this exact thing happened. Um, not just Jews, there were other certain religious and ethnic groups that they referred to as the gypsies or the colored at the time, which was black folks, were run out of colleges. They went after a lot of different ethnic and religious minorities in Germany at the time. And it was college students who led the way. They were indoctrinated in such a manner that they became intolerant and were running them off. Now, of course, that's nationalistic fascism. What we're seeing here seems to me a little more Marxist. At the end of the day, it winds up in the same place. Whether you go too far left or too far right, you go from a republic to a dictatorship or an oligopoly, depending on how it structures. And neither one is good. So going too far left or right is equally going to screw everyone. That being said, the way they were approached was very different. So from the get-go, when University of Texas was asked to, do something about the protesters went out. They started being disruptive. They gave them a couple of days. They had some good faith discussions, negotiations. Finally, there was a bit of tussling and some kind of like fist fighting violence. And UT called in the state troopers within the first 2 days. Said, okay, this is enough. Clearly, these guys don't have a goal, a message. They're just being disruptive. They're trying to take over buildings. And within the first few days, the police went in there. They removed people. Some folks wouldn't leave a building. We actually, our DPS and the county and city cops actually flashbanged the protesters in one of the buildings. And then the ones they couldn't get out, they then CS gassed them and took them out. Um, Colombia, on the other hand, went on for quite a while. They blocked not only other students, they were fighting with Jewish students. They specifically wouldn't allow certain Jewish students onto campus. A Jewish professor's badge would no longer work, which is interesting because the protesters don't control who badges in and out. That's the university. Someone in the school took away his access. That's concerning too because it's a dissenting voice. College is supposed to be a place where people can dissent and disagree openly in a respectful and academic manner, not a place of indoctrination, which is basically what they've become. Um, Colombia did nothing or very little until the House of Representatives, both Democrat and Republicans, got together. I did another video on this and said, you're in violation of Title VI or whatever title it is, the academic title for funding, which basically says you have denied Jewish and certain other groups rights to campus despite their paying for tuition. They're violating their civil rights. So if you don't correct this, you're going to start losing. We're going to vote to remove federal funding or block international funding from the university. And once that happened, sorry, my headset's getting crooked here. Once that happened, all of a sudden, within 48 hours, NYPD came in, and it was, you guys saw everything on the news. The difference in reaction was very profound. Uh, UT is known as a more left-leaning, kind of liberal arts kind of school. Not necessarily liberal, but more liberal arts, soft arts. English majors, history. They do have a great engineering school as well. Um, but the UT regents and the president and the board, within 48 hours, were saying, "You're although we encourage protest, and demonstrating and protesting is a civil right and a privilege of our country, um, there are rules to how you do it, and blocking other people, threatening violence, destroying property, uh, causing other situations is outside of the rules. And when you break rules, there are consequences." And that was from the University of Texas. Colombia is now dealing with the aftershock, where a lot of Jewish students and other students, not just Jewish ones, are now finishing their semester. They can't go to school in person. Some are missing a graduation. And the ones that are there are now trying to transfer out. Further, they're losing a lot of funding from a lot of corporate sponsors who were not fans of how that was done. Again, it wasn't a question of protest or not protest, it was a question of how the protests were. Now, what we're hearing in the media is that NYPD is finding, now that they arrested 300 something people, more than half were not students or had no affiliation with the student. It wasn't like I'm a student and my brother was there. No, they were third parties that were instigating problems. The same thing we saw during BLM, the same thing we saw during Antifa, the same thing we saw during Occupy. This is a Marxist tactic that we're seeing in play. Ultimately, now the school has been cleared, materials are being thrown out, but there was a lot of funding, organization. Those tents were all the same design, the same color or similar colors. Someone went and bought bulk equipment to kick off this protest. Uh, that reflects the differences in the country across the map when you look at it. What concerns me is there's no consistent response to this kind of behavior. Over the last month, we've seen these same pro Palestine protesters or Hamas protesters blocking bridges, blocking roads, getting in fistfights with motorists, hitting people with flags and shoving matches in the streets, generally causing chaos. Now, whether you agree or disagree with this whole Israel Hamas thing, what side you choose is irrelevant when you start looking at the fact that innocent people, third party people, people like us who don't have a dog in the race, could ultimately be victims of a crime because they're just looking for someone to lash out at. And this is something that concerns me because this kind of situation is very hard for a prepper to deal with. We have our get home bags. If you can carry, if you train, you can have, knife, firearm, whatever defensive item. You have your kit in case you have to go on ground because they burn your truck, block the road. But it creates a lot of variables. I did a video weeks ago that, for example, if you walked from Manhattan to Queens to leave the city and get into the suburbs, it would take roughly 4 hours. From going from downtown Houston to the outskirts of Houston to the popular subdivisions could take upwards of 8 to 12 hours. That assumes a straight walk. You don't stop to pee, you don't get tired, you don't have to tie your shoe, you don't drink water, and more importantly, people are not fighting with each other. Having this kind of unrest and no consistent response to how it's being handled gives the message that it's okay to not only protest, which is fine, but to target people who are not really involved to make your point. And this is where things escalate. This is where people will say, why did you attack my wife in her car? I'll tell you right now, if my granddaughter and daughter-in-law are driving in front of me and protesters try to breach that car, I'm going to react in a manner such that I would if I knew their lives were in danger, because in my mind, they are in danger. This is where things escalate. This is where bloodshed happens, violence happens. And ultimately, that's the goal. The goal of a lot of these more Marxist types is to create such chaos that it forces the government to create martial law, taking away rights, shutting down cities. If you thought COVID was bad, imagine that. What scares me even more is you think about it. You have all these locations, so say 15 bridges they shut down in the protest previously. Now it's 10 to 20 colleges. Imagine one bad player in every one of those locations decides to clack off a pyrotechnic or something bad, and they do it all at the same time. You want to talk about how fast martial law might get applied, how fast curfews will be applied. You're going to see it. And again, the majority of these people, clearly not the students. Now, UT has stated that any student who violates the rules may lose any scholarship money. They may get expelled or suspended from the university. If they're ready to graduate, they may have their degree held. So, but you can't, that's for the students. You can't leverage these third parties. What concerns me, why the hell are these strangers in our campuses? Clearly, our campuses are not secure. So you're paying tens of thousands of dollars to send your kids to university. And guess what? Apparently, anyone can go there and start a riot, start a fight, or assault your kids. To me, that really shatters the image of the universities of America that used to be the place where you learned and grew, and it was a place of discourse and conversation. It's now an indoctrination camp. And guess what? It's not safe anyway, because if you don't obey the indoctrination, rabble rousers, some third party will come and assault you. So that's my take on the Tale of Two Cities. But I want to show you this from Rutgers, which is located in Long Island. Um, Talk about the tale of two nations. Watch this video. Let me see if I can bring this up because this one really got my attention. Hopefully, the audio works. And let's play that for you.
Wake up! 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 Get back! We're not protesting. We're not. We have to clean up. We have to leave. It's still quiet hours. It's still finals. We're not risking removing our demands. USA! 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 USA!
You notice those solidarity shirts have the fist with a lightning bolt through it? The same exact design that BLM had, that Antifa had, that Occupy had. That design keeps coming up over and over and over again. If you don't think since 2008, when the original Occupy protests started in earnest, till now, which has been what, 10, 15 years, we haven't indoctrinated a lot of youth to think that communist and Marxist power is important, you're deluded. You need to watch that. Look at those shirts.
That's what losing looks like. This is what a loser looks like.
You get kind of the flavor of what's going on here. This is two countries we've become. We literally have become a nation within a nation. There are two completely different sides, and it's not like the North and South where you had states here and states there. These are two completely different entities within our country, and they're intertwined. You're seeing it right here. This is a microcosm of what our entire nation has become. And what scares me, although these protesters were peaceful, they acknowledged that they had to move because there was quiet hours. Even that one lady with the megaphone was like, look, we're going to move to this area because it's quiet hours, they're finals, we have to be respectful, we need to make a proper point. These kids were trying to be good. The counter protesters were singing the national anthem. There was no fighting, no throwing. They had their flags and signs. That's great. That's the way it should be done. But in other places, violence occurred and it was okay and nobody did anything. This sets a dangerous precedent that it is okay to do this. We have already, when we shut down for COVID, we created an entire generation that thought it was okay to turn around and punch other people. You could be ugly on the internet, so let me be ugly in person, and that's okay. This is hard to prep for. If you have kids, and here's your takeaway from this one: if you have kids in college, or relatives in college, or you're in college, have a get home bag, have a bag of some type to get you the hell out. If you're a student and you're like, wow, they've overtaken my dorm, I need to get the hell out of here, get out. And you need to have a plan like, okay, now that I got out of the dorm, where am I going? Right? Because even if you call mom or dad or an uncle or someone, they could be hours away at least, saying, hey, this is my plan. I'm going to go to so and so's house. I'm going to go to the Greyhound station. I'm going to the Amtrak. I'm going to the airport. Have a discussion with your high school and college kids if something like this happens, especially the college kids. High school kids, usually you're close to home unless they're in a boarding school of some type. But tell those college kids, same for young adults, right? Your kids are moving out, first job, might be living in their first apartment. Tell them, look, if there's an emergency along these lines, something happens, what's your plan? I would encourage them to have the basics: food, water, first aid kit, lights, and an amenity to cook with, and a backpack and something packed in case they have to leave their apartment. Again, have those conversations now. You have a lot of material that we can look at for scenarios. So don't let this material go to waste. We are living in a very interesting time, and it gives us a unique opportunity to do almost a live stream, real time reaction to things that are going on. But understand, all the international stuff aside, here domestically, being ready to deal with something like that when you walk out of a business meeting, you're on the road with your kids to go visit grandma, or you're a college kid or visiting a college kid, and a protest like this breaks out. You need to have an understanding of the dynamic of what's going on and how to get the hell out of there. You need to have a plan of where you're going to go if there's an emergency. Folks, that's it for this one. Something to think about. Pay attention to your surroundings. Make sure you especially do your homework. I've been preaching this every video. If you're traveling for the summer, if you have students coming home, plan the trip, look at the news, or look at Twitter, look at Facebook, TikTok, whatever. Is there a protest? Is there going to be a blocked road? Is there going to be whatever? And have a plan for that. It's not hard to do, but you got to think about it. Most people get in trouble when they show up. They come out of their dorm. There's a riot in the middle of the campus, and the kids don't know what to do because they never really thought about it. Get them thinking about it. In any case, God bless, Godspeed. Don't forget to hit the like. I'll see you on the next video.